you all. Speaker's going to come up here. I've got a couple of questions. I know everybody in the audience probably got some good questions too. Let me start off. One of the new ideas in school choice, coming from our friends at the Goldwater Institute, actually, is education savings accounts. Who wants to tell? I'd like to just tell people what they are and how they might possibly work into how we do things here in Georgia.
Okay. Thanks, Kelly. Education savings accounts have been called the education debit cards, and they allow parents to get a certain amount. It could be, say, state funding per pupil in Georgia, say $4,500 per student, and you can use that money to offset private school tuition, or you could save it for college if you didn't spend that much. Maybe you could go to a hybrid school where you go to school a couple days a week and you stay home a couple days a week. Maybe you could do some kind of online schooling that's cheaper as well and save that money for college. You could also use that money for tutoring or any other educational services approved by the State Department of Education. Arizona has this, and you can see reports on this at edchoice.org. Click on research, and you can find it. There's 3 reports, 2 by Goldwater Institute folks. And in Arizona, parents are using this for a wide variety of things, and it's wildly popular. Again, the virtue of it is it gives parents an incentive to save money and be cost conscious.
One more is, if you're an education wonk, and I try to follow these things as much as possible. There's this debate going on in conservative think tanks about how much accountability should be required of private schools in a voucher system or other school choice system. Checker Finn has argued that if a private school has a significant number of publicly funded voucher students, they ought to have to publish their financial information and standardized test scores and all that. Rick Cass and Jay Green are arguing the other side. From what you said, the standardized test scores are not as important. If you move from a top-down accountability system to a system of school choice, where you have universal choice, would that mean that it works both ways, that the public schools, because everyone is frustrated with the amount of testing we have now, would you be able to reduce the amount of testing within the public schools if you have the accountability of school choice?
I think you said policy wonk. That would be you, Ben.
I would be in favor of any school of choice where parents have multiple choices where to send their kids to school to be free from state mandates such as testing and curriculum. I would support that.
Yeah, and I think it's a question of who decides what is valuable in a school, right? So if you think that the state, through standardized tests, is the arbiter of a good school, then you should agree that everyone should be tested. If you think parents are capable of making decisions, then you should support a more robust marketplace and more choices for them.
Questions? Now we got some good questions here.
I've got a question about the private schools and avoiding the standardization process. It seems to me that I've read advanced test quality standards that were issued in 2012. As long as the private schools have to adhere to the accreditation standards, you've still got standardization coming out of the federal and state levels that are now attaching to the private schools. And I don't quite see where the escape is going to be. It's just that the parents won't fully appreciate that.
There are multiple accrediting bodies that private schools use, and if the existing accrediting bodies become burdensome rules, you and I can start our own accrediting body, right, and make sure that schools are keeping up with minimum rules of just conduct and safety and things like that. So.
I was curious, the survey said that the 2 most important reasons that people go to take their kids to private schools are a disciplined, safe, and orderly school. I guess the implication is that's what they're not seeing in the public school system. But my question is, the way to fix that is that training for teachers to control the classroom, or is it that sometimes the environments are just chaotic? Well, what's the solution to fixing that within the public school system?
Well, I'll deal with your last question. I think the solution to that is giving people choice, then they'll have to fix it. Right now, they're under so much legal and bureaucratic things. When I worked for Governor Perdue, we relaxed all those laws, but now the federal government's coming in and superseding that. So Georgia can't fix that. I think if you give people an escape valve, things will change. If you don't give them an escape valve, I don't think they will.
So competition.
Yes, sir.
And just to follow up on Ben's answer, in our report, the More Than Scores report that's available online, we delve deeply into statistics regarding the cultural conditions facing many of the parents and students that are choosing to leave public school to go to private school. And they're really quite stark in terms of the situation that these parents are facing. And so the idea that somehow parents should have to keep their children in a school that isn't safe and orderly until that school's fixed or until teachers are better trained, when in fact, if they had a choice, they would enter the marketplace and choose a safer and more orderly learning environment. That's that competitive pressure, I think, that needs to happen. And really, it's a cultural issue as much as it is a training issue.
Essentially, with the school charter failures, is there any record-keeping organization that goes in and does an autopsy on what caused the charter school to fail, and if that, or is that data accessible to schools who are seeking to start up?
When I was on the Charter School Commission, the first iteration, I did vote to close 2 schools, and there was mountains of data that the Charter Commission has. I don't know if they have any plans to publicize that, but they have that information in gory detail.
Glenn?
Yeah, I just wanted to find out what the panel thinks. Governor Deal, 2 weeks ago, wrote an editorial in the AJC, which he said that his goal is to get at least 60% of our entering 9th graders to graduate with a 2 or 4 year degree from college, because that's what the surveys show is necessary for the job creation. Wouldn't that be the ultimate criteria that we ought to judge our schools by, as opposed to standardized tests? That's question number one. And secondly, I wonder if people in the audience know what level we're at right now compared to that 60%.
What's that? So to your first question about isn't that what schools should be held accountable for? Absolutely, right? Like we've constructed a lot of much more complicated measures to get at what's a good high school or a good school system. But isn't the point of going through school to be able to do something next, right? So when I was with the Office of Student Achievement a few years ago, we actually found a data set that tracked kids into college and found that it's extremely low, like fewer than half of the students, I think was the answer, went either to a 2-year or a 4-year college within a year of graduating from high school, and it's much lower in some places. So, and a lot don't finish at all. So my college president often says, finishing college is a great thing to do, right? Going to college is a terrible thing to do, right? If you go and don't finish, you're almost worse off than if you had never started.
David?
What impact do you think, if charter schools are a small percentage right now of public education, what are the implications of charter schools affecting the larger body of public schools? There's concern that, the more motivated leave, the less motivated stay behind, and you kind of, if it works well, you'll create a system. What are the prospects of, or is there a tipping point where if you have enough of this, then it'll impact the remaining public schools, so you change their culture versus they're just, you create a system of haves and have-nots?
You definitely need a critical mass of competition to provide people a escape valve. I think there is this canard that the most motivated will leave public schools. I think they already have left public schools in a lot of ways, and they've moved to very expensive neighborhoods with really good public schools. Who's leaving with tax credit scholarships, who's leaving in charter schools, tends to be more disadvantaged people. Kelly and I and Eric wrote this piece for the Georgia Public Policy Foundation during the charter school debate. about, if you look at startup charter schools, they have more low-income kids than traditional public schools. They have more minority kids. And Goals, and Grace, they're serving low-income kids. That's who wants to leave. If you're in North Fulton in a great public school, you're happy.
But you still have the ones in those more disadvantaged neighborhoods that don't seem, you have some that want it and others that are staying in the underperforming schools. Do you see one that this underperforming school, will they ever get the benefits of this, or are they just left behind?
I live in Baldwin County. I can count on one hand how many Georgia College professors send their kids to Baldwin County public schools. They've already left. I think if more choice was available in Baldwin County, and where my kids, we were in public school, we moved to private, but people all told me, don't try it. But I tried. Our private school has like 40-some kids on goal, so they've rescued 40 kids. The answer is to give more life rafts, not fewer.
I'd just like to say, I think if we don't improve all public schools, we failed. I mean, that's the whole point, because even in Sweden, where you have full school choice, 80% of the people are going to be going to public schools. So that's the end goal. We want to give choice, and that raises all boats. I think we need to look at one simple thing, is actually closing failing schools, but allowing successful schools to replicate and expand. Now, Kittredge Magnet School is a great example in DeKalb County. They constantly have a waiting list, and parents that want to go there can't go there. Well, how often would that happen in the private sector? You'd open another location or expand. But we need to free up our public schools to innovate as well. And what they've done in New Orleans and in Tennessee is unbelievable. That's what they're doing. They're closing those bottom 5% schools. They're bringing in outside management. They're allowing the best schools to expand. And it's probably the most underreported story in education. If you've seen the curve of the African American students in the city of New Orleans, their performance has gone like this, and here's the state average. I think they've already surpassed the state average, and they predict that very soon, the students in New Orleans, the African American students in New Orleans, are going to surpass the white student average in Louisiana. Now imagine if we did that in Atlanta. How exciting that would be. And so that's impacting all of the schools, but I think it's a very good point. We try very hard not to come across, we're not anti-public school. I went to public school. I think we've got to fix all of the schools. We just think choice is the way to do that. Glenn?
Kelly, back to the one point about Governor Deal's target. Last year, he made every college and university in the system develop a plan on how we were going to get to 60% of our entering ninth graders graduating by 2018. We spend $17.5 billion annually in this state, and the number of students we have now who meet that goal is 9. 9 out of 100 entering ninth graders. And only 2 of them are minority students. So if we don't improve that number, the jobs are going elsewhere, and we're not going to survive economically.
The lawyer always knows the answer to every question he asks, right? Got time? 2 more questions. Back in the back.
Was a point that came up at the beginning of the Q&A. I think I heard you say, Ben, that if you had a competition as a measure of accountability, you could reduce the use of standardized test scores. And I was wondering how that would play out in the charter school scenario, where isn't the performance that's in the charter, and whether it's renewed or the performance is done based on standardized tests. So if you didn't have standardized tests, what measure would you use to judge the performance of charters?
There's a wide variety of things the commission uses now, and certainly when I was there, on evaluating charters, including financial accountability. Do they have a board? Is the board meeting? I think crowdsourcing is coming. There could be other measures, but also parents seem to be doing a pretty good job of choosing schools now. I said I voted to close 2 charter schools. I got an email to my account at Georgia College from every single parent at both of those schools. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I think it was roughly every single parent. All of them complained about where their kids would have to go back. I'm not sure I did the right vote. I mean, if I changed my vote, it would have been 6-1 against me, but I think there are other things people can look at.
One more? Kyle, do you have a question? No. Anybody else? Last question.
On standardized test scores, isn't it true that the charter schools automatically, that's far lower of an issue because of the education they're getting? I mean, they seem to achieve those more readily.
They do quite well, yes, sir.
That's kind of the point. It isn't an issue because they are overachieving against test scores.
They're doing better than average, yes.
Please thank our panel. Thank you all for coming. If you're not subscribed to the Friday Facts, where we announce all of our events and publications, it's free, weekly email. Just leave your business card at the table as you leave. Hope to see you February 26th at our next event. In the meantime, help us celebrate school choice day at the Capitol if you have time today at noon. Be careful driving.
Is there any particular piece of information that you want?